Namaste. My name is Tim Halloran. I'm an astrologer from Savannah, Georgia. This is a weekly astrological forecast for the final week of July, the first week of August 2015. And today is Tuesday, July 28th. And we're talking about a pretty energetically thick time. There is a lot we can be feeling, we can be thinking, we can be processing as we are entering this period where there is a lot of cycles beginning and ending. There is a lot of transitioning, there is a lot of transformation. So this is an energetically tense period. As we talked about last week, this is when we can be feeling uncertainty. We might be experiencing challenges. It might not be super easy, but there is a whole lot of progress that can happen, particularly this next month. So we've got a full moon this Friday in Aquarius. We've got a Venus retrograde lasting pretty much the next month. And we've got Saturn turning direct this weekend. So here is kind of one of these critical periods of this year where we are pushing through stuff, and I mean pushing through stuff. We oftentimes want to jump over stuff or skimmy around stuff, and this is a period where we are pushing through stuff. So we do have quite a lot to talk about today, and we're going to hopefully talk about it objectively as we have the full moon in Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign that rules astrology. We're trying to have this bird's eye view, objective understanding of what's going on as we go through the Leo season and have Venus moving backwards into Leo on the day of our full moon, this Friday. And Venus will remain in Leo through the second week of October. 4 months of Leo. And Leo is this highly personal, subjective, taking my history, my truth, my experience personally. And this full moon Aquarius therefore highlights the polarity between the objective scientist who sees from the big picture point of view, understanding how all things are interconnected, versus the Leonian point of view that sees my experience, my story, and can feel rather separate in this lone story, this lone hero's quest. So let's talk about it. I mean, we're coming out of this weekend that could have been pretty tumultuous. We had Mars square to Uranus, where these spontaneous emotions, spontaneous actions, spontaneous outbursts are possible. And we also had, Venus retrograde began over the weekend. Uranus turned retrograde over the weekend, this huge revolutionary, explosive push. And we also had the moon in Scorpio on Friday and Saturday. Here is this potential for conflict and tumultuousness. So this is the weekend we're coming out of. And this was kind of even set prior to this 2 weeks ago when we had the new moon in Cancer. And we had Mars opposite to Pluto, Mercury opposite to Pluto, and we knew we were coming into this next moon cycle that was going to be somewhat intense and transformative. This is when we had the giant blue dragonfly landed on the camera, and the dragonfly represents transformation. And now that I'm here, there's tons of blue dragonflies flying everywhere, and this is what we're seeing. This is an intense time of transformation. And in times of intense transformation, it can feel tumultuous, it can feel uncertain, and because we have Venus retrograde going on, we can really feel this stuff in our own value systems, in our hobbies, and what's important to us, and certainly we can be feeling all this playing out in our relationships. So, the moon moved into Sagittarius Sunday afternoon, and now the moon's actually moving into Capricorn. Then Thursday, the moon moves into Aquarius. Friday at 6:43 a.m. we have the full moon at 7 minutes and 56 degrees. 7 degrees, 56 minutes of Aquarius at 6:43 a.m. Eastern Time. So this full moon is on the day that Venus moves back into Leo. And we've also got Jupiter moving through the sign of Leo, conjuncting Venus for the second time in the last month, and the two of them are square to Saturn. And in fact, Venus, who has been sitting at 0 degrees Virgo, has been square to Saturn last week and really these next couple weeks. So we are dealing with some stage setting. We are dealing with issues that might be coming to the surface that is going to be setting the stage for the hero's quest that's really going to be taking place through this next month, if you really want to look at it, through October. All right, and we want to look at our birth chart for 14 degrees to 30 degrees of Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, or Scorpio, as these planets are going to be what is most affected by this Venus retrograde, and these planets will experience 3 passes of Venus from July to October. So here is this period of Venus retrograde. And what is Venus retrograde? Is about rewinding our own relationships, our past relationships, our value systems. This is huge. This affects so many areas of our life. And when Venus goes retrograde, she gets stronger. We think about our values more. We think about our relationship dynamic more. And she goes into her underworld, which means that we see the stuff that could have got shoved under, the stuff that is uncertain, the stuff that does cause us to feel insecure. And because the majority of this retrograde is going to be in Leo, beginning this Thursday through the mid-September is when Venus turns direct, this is experiencing insecurities in our own expression, our own individuality, our own sexuality, and generally what makes us ourselves, what gives us this unique, personal, subjective experience. So Leo is this very important sign, Leo being ruled by the sun, and the sun is the center of the universe, and this is where we get the concept of ego as well as soul and spirit. And Leo kind of has this huge spectrum of possibilities, because Leo does represent kind of the full spectrum of what the lion can represent. And the lion is our soul and our ego. It is our individuality. And I personally see us all as having individual souls that are eternal. So our souls have personalities. Our souls have history and story going back innumerable lifetimes that's connected to a divine story. And so I see the soul as sort of possessing an ego. But there is this full spectrum of what Leo can represent, being the individual mundane ego. That's the ego part of ourself that has a set standards. Things should look and feel a particular way that comes from our limited perspective. And then we have the Leo story that is our soul's story, that goes back innumerable lifetimes, that is deep, that is rich, and this is where we get love and compassion and our capability to really express our truth in a way that heals and uplifts other people. So the spectrum of Leo can kind of go from the ravaged beast, the lion who is going to rip people to shreds and dominate and be a tyrant and an asshole, and the narcissistic, look at me, I'm the only important one, I'm the center of the universe. And this is really negative third chakra blockages and tendencies to close down before it reaches love, before it reaches really the spiritual stage of Leo, as all of these signs through the zodiac have lower and higher octaves, have negative and positive possibilities. Now, the positive Leo is much more like the lion Aslan from the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. And those of us who read those books understand that Aslan is essentially God in those books. And he's this royal, regal, divine, simultaneously courageous and protecting his children, and gentle and nurturing at the same time. And that's the highest octave of Leo. And to get from low octave Leo, which is bashing heads, my truth versus your truth, my perspective versus your perspective, my values versus your values, my wounds versus your wounds. And it really is this, I can only see from my perspective. I'm limited to my own egoic preferences and beliefs. Where we get from there to the Aslan godly embodying universal truth and unconditional love that simply radiates onto other people, the same way the sun radiates onto earth, impregnates earth and causes all life to flourish here. This is the potential of Leo. And to get from the ravaging beast to the godly Aslan Leo, we need the strength card in the tarot. We see this woman holding open the mouth of the lion. That lion is perfectly tamed, under control, and gentle. And this is what we are learning to do through this next month with a Venus retrograde going through Leo, is we are learning to practice this type of strength to simultaneously harness our power, which is our individual story. We acquire our power from our experiences that shape our truth. We all have unique experiences, both pleasant and painful. We all have wounding experiences that are initiations into finding our strength, into becoming the healer, the Aslan type of personality that we all have the potential to be. There is a respectful, there is a noble, there is an attractive way to be the king and queen, and this is what we are learning to do through moving through all of our stuff, not jumping over it or skimming around it, by moving through our stuff. Venus goes into the underworld to confront our insecurities, our fears, our challenges. This is not a time where we may necessarily be feeling like our relationship has never been better. And if we feel like our relationship is not exactly in that place, we can feel okay in that position because naturally this is being in tune with nature. This is the time to investigate, to go deeply. This is the time to question, to ask, to be uncertain, to want to experiment, to want to figure things out because we don't know if things are perfect. That is this Venus in the 0 degrees of Virgo square to Saturn. Is I have this concept, this idea of what a relationship should look like. I want this level of security. I want to feel this healthy. And it doesn't have to just be relationship. Venus retrograde affects us all, in relationships or not. If you're not in an intimate relationship, it still affects all of your associations to friends, family, business associates. And furthermore, this affects our internal values. What is most important to us? Where are we directing our energy? And this Venus at 0 degrees Virgo is like, I have these new standards. I want to achieve this new level in my values. I have a new hobby. I have a new practice, a new health regimen, a new schedule. And this is the period where we're not feeling totally certain about it. We're confronting the challenge that is initiating the hero's quest of what we will move through in order to get that security, to get that health regimen, in order to feel that much more secure in our own values. And this is a time where relationship can change. If our relationships are unhealthy and we realize, oh my goodness, values of myself, values of my partner, not matching up at all, this creates change and transition. This is the purpose of a Venus retrograde, is for us to go into our own underworld, question our values, make adjustments, and this always automatically changes everything. When our value system changes, our relationships change, our friendships change, our hobbies change, our jobs change, because your value is what's most important to you. And this Venus retrograde investigation is going through the sign of Leo, which really makes this about you. This is about finding what our core values are in their total depth. And this certainly plays out in the arena of creativity as well. We each have a unique truth that desires to be released from ourselves, not just bottled up and kept to the side forever. Every single unique individual on this planet has a unique truth that is a gift for us to share to the world through releasing it, which is a form of expression. So we have all artistic expression, and creative expression and sexual expression are one and the same. How we like to receive and give sexual energy is a reflection of our personal truth and our personal history. And we have a lot of healing to do of both our unique soul expression and our sexual expression in this world at this time. Most of us are going really far deep, reviewing past relationships, maybe even going as far back as our childhoods, our early life experiences that are typically reflecting past life experiences. And these themes are redundant and old. And the insecurities and the fears can be redundant and old. I always fear this. This always happens to me. This wound hurts and it keeps on hurting. And this is the opportunity to go there, to go through this stuff. We have to go through it. This requires faith. This requires trust of the greater process. When we're in a relationship, it requires trust of our love for another. It also requires trust in the universe, that when relationships don't always stay together, and they don't, this is a human incarnation. We're not here eternally. We're going to leave here eventually, no matter what. We have to be okay with the fact that things do come together and leave. There is separation and union, and this is all okay. This is all good. But there is a lot of transitioning that is going on. And speaking of creativity, on the day of this full moon, we also have asteroid Pallas Athena, and she's square to Juno, which is our partnerships, and what we look to, what we value in relationships. And so here again, we see this tension of creativity and my brilliance versus partnership. And how might relationships and partnership be limiting my individual creativity? So for those of us in relationships, coming out of this last week, with Mars square to Uranus, now we've got Pallas square to Juno all this week, next week, we can really be feeling freedom urge, like I feel limited. I feel like this represses me. And one of the most important things throughout this entire Venus retrograde, throughout the next month in Leo, is that all of this stuff playing out in our relationships, whether intimate relationships, friends, associates, whatever, this always reflects stuff that has to do with us and our story. And that fact comes directly out of a universal truth that whomever is in our life, we have a deep connection to. Particularly those we have a very deep connection to. These are relationships that go back innumerable lifetimes, which means that we've had particular stories together, which means that our relationship dynamic reflects my own story back to me, my own personal history. This can be reflecting really deep stuff that has to do with our core truth, our personal history going back many lifetimes, which means that now we are working together with these individuals to move through this stuff together. And so, of course, in our relationships, in order for them to be intimate and truly bonding and truly loving, we have to have an underlying shared value system. And this value system has to, really, for those I'm speaking to, incorporate a level of understanding that we are always evolving and transforming. And therefore, the function of marriage is really to say we have a spiritual goal and we're helping each other move to that goal by moving through our stuff together. We're not going to jump over our stuff together. We're not going to try and skimmy around our stuff together. We're not going to encourage each other's comfort zones, as we don't want to fall in love with prison and say, oh, I'm going to make my home here and stay here forever, when we are moving in a direction where we can be in much more lofty places than prison. So we have a full moon this Friday in the morning in Aquarius, the day Venus moves retrograde back into Leo. The sign of the personal, the subjective, it's difficult to override my thoughts and my feelings because my thoughts and my feelings sure do seem like me. And that's kind of the whole Leo over tendency to take things overly personally. Yes? is we can think something, we can feel something, we can even go through an experience that seems really personal. And these thoughts, these feelings may not be me. It's not that simple. It really is never that simple. And yet, who lives their life not believing that the internal dialogue in their head isn't them? This is what we believe. And when we feel feelings like, uh-oh, something's going wrong, or uh-oh, things seem really bad, how do we not assign a story to those feelings and believe that something is going wrong, that something is going bad? So these thoughts and these feelings and this personal subjective perspective, it can be very easy to be super glued to. And on one hand, this is beneficial because we're learning about this, we're submerging in this, and simultaneously we will get nothing from this if we cannot balance this with some Aquarian objectivity. So this means that as we are submerging, as we're moving through this stuff, and we're feeling the feelings, we're thinking the thoughts, we're experiencing the experience. We even have temporary experiences that sure do seem like things are really going to be the way they seem in the experience, but that experience could be temporary. It might seem like the end of the world, and really seem like it, and it not actually be the end of the world. So we need to detach as we simultaneously submerge, which seems like a contradiction, and welcome to being a human being. We always are full of contradictions. We're always working with opposites in order to understand ourselves. If we don't work with opposites and understand that we're always conflicting and contradicting ourselves, then we just don't understand our own nature. We're not going to get it. So we have to understand that we have to play the contradiction here, be really personal, submerge in our thoughts and feelings, but not take them personally simultaneously. We have to have the part of ourself that's feeling, going into the past, and like Leo becomes all dramatic. You know, this is my drama. This makes me feel a certain way, and this is good. Leo is all about release. We need to feel these things. We need to let those alligator tears pour down. We need to let these feelings out. And this is where creativity comes in, is let that transform you. Let that be channeled into music, into art, into acting, whatever. Let it out. Let those emotions be released. Be really dramatic. Let it all go. We want to let this stuff go. And simultaneously, we need to be able to detach ourselves enough to see ourselves doing the drama, doing the art, doing the releasing, and understand, aha, I am releasing. I am feeling into the past. I am thinking what I'm thinking, and I'm feeling what I'm feeling, and I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing, but it may not be the full picture. And these feelings and these thoughts and these experiences may in fact be connected to greater story that really extends beyond me. It connects to a collective experience, a collective history. Maybe my experience of frustration of sexuality or expression isn't just a personal oppression or punishment, it's connected to a global phenomenon. As we are moving through our masculine and feminine disbalance collectively, we all are born into a culture that doesn't get it. It's either seesawing one way or the other. So our sexuality seesaws one way or the other. Our artistic creative expression seesaws one way or the other. One day, it's too unrealistic to be an artist. Oh, blah, blah, blah. You've got to make a living, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's wasting your time. And then other days, if I'm not being the artist, I'm lying to myself. I'm just being a hamster running in the wheel, and we seesaw back and forth and back and forth. And we are starting to understand that there is a duality and a polarity that we're trying to balance here that connects us to fundamental having to do with the masculine and feminine dynamic and relationship. And then guess what? This is connected to a personal history, connected to a global history that's been really disbalanced for a long time, and then this gets played out in our relationships, in our sexuality, in our individual artistic creative expression. Which means as we move through this stuff in ourself, in our relationships, through feeling and thinking what we are feeling and thinking, We are simultaneously healing these issues and these wounds that come from a very core part of ourself, which means that we have the opportunity to progress through it all and achieve that level of sexual creative expression, of love, of releasing my love, of my personal view, of my truth to the world, and feeling good to release this stuff from myself. Everybody is a fountainhead of love. Everybody is a fountainhead of truth, inevitably. And we're all trying to clear out all the clutter that's blocking this from happening, which is the free-flowing, automatic, and effortless, spontaneous expression of one's truth. We're coming from a world where there's been a lot of problems that have prevented us from doing this. It is not our faults for feeling frustrated, for feeling hopeless, for feeling let down, because we are encountering now these issues. We are encountering these issues to move through this stuff. That way we can be the ones to deliver this to the world. So this is a very active, big deal time. And once again, we need to harness the full moon energy on Friday and be the scientist. Do Aquarius, which is to understand, hey, we're on the cusp of this Pisces Aquarian age. Therefore, we are completing and culminating the ancient cycles that have gone through this entire past age. Thousands and thousands of years are being culminated, completed, and resolved through us now as individuals and through our intimate relationships. So there is a bigger picture underneath all this, and there is a process that is happening. This is Aquarius, as the scientist, is understanding that it's not all personal. This is a process. This is a chemical reaction. When there's a chemical reaction in a relationship, it seems like it's good and evil, good guy, bad guy, and blah, blah, blah. It's all personal. We start resenting each other. We start blaming each other. This is like, the carnivorous lower octave Leo-Lionian as we just ravage each other. But if we can understand that this isn't actually good and evil and ravaging each other for no reason, this is a chemical reaction that is happening because our entire human life is in fact a process, is an unfoldment. It's not always what you're doing right and wrong and you're getting rewarded or punished. Each of us are going through long-term chemical reactions that are evolving and transforming us into achieving our desires. So feeling going down, feeling going backwards is sometimes a tool and a process in the service of us going forward and being uplifted. So let's be the devil's advocate this week. This is part of Aquarius energy, as Aquarius used to be ruled by Saturn, the devil. We need to play devil's advocate. When we think and we feel something, play devil's advocate with our own thoughts and feelings. And furthermore, this is really playing the devil, be devil's advocate for your own devil's advocate. This is really playing the scientist. This is being unsatisfied with whatever conclusions we may be coming up with until we truly and tangibly have proved to ourselves that this is the truth and we know. We need to keep with us that scientific objectivity through this next month, at least until Venus turns direct, the second, mid-September. We need to not jump to conclusions. We need to not make revisions until we truly know. Possess that scientific understanding. Run experiments. Don't jump to conclusions. Step into the unknown. Speak whatever you haven't spoken before. Release whatever feelings and thoughts you have not felt and thought before, or at least have not shared. This is the opportunity to share these things. This is the opportunity to try something that hasn't been done. And then we get our conclusive evidence. And we know our truth and our direction definitely through challenging our own truth and definition and direction. This is what nobody does either, is everybody's, I'm a religionist, I'm a spiritual person, I know my truth, and then they never challenge their truth. Read a different book for once. Break a rule that you think is really so important and see if those rules are really important. How are you going to know if you've never challenged your own understanding? So this is the period where we're feeling a lot, thinking a lot. It's taking us into our personal truth, and simultaneously we are challenging, we are experimenting, and we're seeing from this objective scientific point of view. So we can truly appreciate how this stuff that is going on these days is connected to a bigger picture, taking us into bigger truths, bigger potential, greater power than we ever previously realized before. So let's go for it. It's a big time. There's a lot that can happen. Let's push forward through fall. And fall is the boat moving forward. Full sail ahead. So I'd be happy to look at your own natal chart throughout this time. We can look at your charts, your transits. I am really behind in my charts. I'm going to be sending emails to people saying, sorry, feeling a bunch of stuff, thinking a bunch of stuff, haven't been able to be super objective enough to stay on top of my charts as much as I would like to. But we're moving through all this stuff. We're going forward, so I really hope in the future to be healthy and stable and powerful enough to be able to completely offer whatever I have to offer to you guys, and that would be truly beneficial for me to release what I have to release. Let's release all this stuff together. Let's find our talents, our gems. This is good stuff. So I'm wishing all the best for you and your beloveds. Namaste.